Good morning. This is Doug Tackett. I would like to share with you some information on ProWorks from a management perspective today. I'd like to start off with a question, looking at the requirements to grow and shrink effectively in a cyclic economy like we're all experiencing today. At Everett Charles, we came up with three answers to this question. First, we needed to be able to add new people quickly at a minimal cost. We needed to be able to transport our processes quickly and efficiently across the country or across the world. And we needed to be able to capture and disseminate tribal information to share with all of our production people. We answered this by creating a piece of software we named ProWorks. We developed it over approximately 12 years at Everett Charles Technologies at a time when we were at our main manufacturing in Pomona, California. And we started going to China for some of our contract assembly. Currently we have over 3,000 seats licensed worldwide at a variety of different companies. And to answer the question succinctly, what is ProWorks? It's an enhanced work instruction system that we have developed at ECT. The enhancements included real-time process control to feed back information from manufacturing to engineering and management. Incident management to record and categorize the different issues that we came across in manufacturing and to learn from those. Training management so we can ensure that all of our production people were properly trained. A scheduling and to-do list so we could make sure that things did not fall out of the bit bucket or in-mail basket in Outlook. Simultaneous multi-language support, because we were mixing production people who were speaking one language and engineers who were speaking a different language, and the two needed to communicate and have a common page to look at. And multi-site support, because again we were operating out of the US, Japan, and China. Now, all of this has to do with labor flexibility. The first topic, which we're going to dive into a little bit deeper, is training new hires, or in our case we like to hire temps, and we need to inexpensively and quickly get them ramped up into the current processes. Now, our original way to bring in new people was to pair them with an experienced user, and this was not a very good solution for a couple of reasons. First one is we needed to preserve the experts for the advanced processes that might be going on in the factory, and we were tying them up. The second thing is that the experts wanted to train at a very fast pace because they were very familiar with the process. At the same time, the novice was trying to learn and needed to go at a very slow pace, and if you push them too fast, they just ended up nodding their head saying, "Yes, I understand," when they actually had no clue what was going on. Now, another problem was that a lot of our production people, they were what we call kinesthetic learners. It's not a derogatory term. I'm a kinesthetic learner myself. I need to learn by doing, doing the process in my hot little hands. Looking at somebody else showing me how to do it is not a very good learning experience for kinesthetic learners. It works for about 10 minutes and then they're basically overwhelmed and forgetting everything you're showing them. So in ProWorks, we're actually letting the trainee do the process largely on their own. What we have embedded is certain checkpoints where we stop and we have their work checked by an expert or supervisor to validate it and verify that it is the proper quality. That, along with the hand-holding that's present within ProWorks, gives them a very good self-paced training method. And of course we have to manage all the training records and needs. At one place we have 70 trainees and 100 processes that they're learning, and of course you're not going to have every trainee learn every process, but you need to have all the information about who is trained, when were they were trained, who checked off that they were doing a good job, so we have some tracking, and that's all handled within ProWorks. Now, second key component of labor flexibility is the transportability, and that is we need to be able to move the processes. A couple of keys to this are we need to be able to share our tribal knowledge. Any manufacturing process, you get these craftsmen in there or experienced user that have a lot of time to learn the process. They've had a lot of experience dealing with problems, how to resolve those problems, and that's great, except that information typically does not get shared. The people in production floor are not Their goal is not to put a bunch of information in a database for you. It's carried around in their head, and we need to share that. A second issue when we're transporting is, again, the language issues. We're working with multiple cultures, multiple languages, and we need to have one place where everybody can look on the same page and, in the language of their choice, read the process and understand it. And of course, there's communications between the different locations. Because we're a database that can be supported on multiple servers at the same time, if somebody in China has a problem, they can actually push it on to somebody who in the US to address it, or vice versa. And it's very transparent to them. It's very simple to use. A third component is what we call enhanced or outsourcing quality. And one of the key things that we have when we're outsourcing is we're taking a process that we probably developed in-house. We've probably got a couple of years experience in it. We have a very high quality, very well defined process. And if we push that to an outsourced vendor and we don't share that process with him, we will not get the quality that we expect. And that's going to reflect on us negatively as a company. And so we want to be able to share that process with the vendors so they can maintain the same quality that we have. Now, the easiest way to do that is to go ahead and install ProWorks at their facility, and that's like what I would do right here, and they're using the same process that we have. I've got the same travel information that I've learned, I'm sharing with them, and that transparency goes both ways. I can see where their problems are also. So if they start getting behind or having recurring issues, I can actually see what it is at my remote site as an engineer. Some of our vendors, they may not be willing or able to go ahead and install ProWorks. Maybe they don't have the infrastructure necessary on their networks. We can also share this information through a web portal or through a PDF output to print. So that same information can be shared in a variety of different ways with them. Now, all of this requires what we call structural integrity, which is really the key requirement for flexibility. And the key to this is having the same robust, well-defined process available for everyone. This particular issue right here is the biggest cost factor when you're implementing ProWorks. The software itself is not really all that expensive, but you do have to take the time to define a process. And if you have no process defined, then it becomes a significant job. If you have an existing process, you can import it into ProWorks relatively easily, but it's still going to take some time. And I said that's the big barrier right there. The neat thing about this is that once you have this robust process, your quality is now controlled by the process. In a traditional manufacturing environment, you have these experts that know how to build the product, and their craftsmanship controls your quality. Unfortunately, their craftsmanship comes and goes with that person, and it's not transportable. But a well-defined process is transportable. These processes, of course, are all dynamic, so they're going to change. We're going to run across problems. We're going to change our process, tweak it a little bit to address those issues, and we need to make sure that that gets shared among everybody. So if we're running multiple production lines, this communications back and forth becomes really important, and it needs to be done automatically because people are not going to remember to do it. The software, it needs to learn on these past corrective actions. When we start off with a process, the very first time you run it, it's not really that much better than a paper process. But as you start running into problems, categories of problems and the solutions, then the software, the process is enhanced, and it actually grows as you use it. Now, when we start running across problems, the first few times, that's great. We have the problem issued, we have a corrective action, or what I would call a workaround on how to address it. But what's more important is that we actually get flagged when there is a recurring problem and figure out how to do a preventive action request so it's permanently eradicated. And this can come from the user. When they start seeing the recurring problem, they can go ahead and flag it for that. The manager can see in the reports that, hey, he's got a reoccurring problem, and then mark this for a permanent action request. And the really cool thing about that is once you start that process, it gets assigned to somebody. If they forget it, they start getting reminded on their to-do list that they need to address this problem. So you won't lose focus of it. Now, all of this, as I talked about in those reports, is having some transparency. Here I've got a report, and it's showing very clearly that, hey, you've got some processes that are going along just fine, but you've got one here that it's a quarter of the way complete. It's supposed to be halfway complete. We know immediately that we've got some problems that we need to address. We need more people, different people, or we've got a problem with parts. But it's being able to see into this process while it's running that's key for the managers, so they can react very quickly and timely. Material issues, again, they have to get pushed into the responsible parties. Since everything is real time, as the manager, we're going to see it almost instantly when it starts falling behind schedule. All of the different steps, we know how long they take. If we don't know how long they take, we can run it a couple of times, and after the second or third time we run it, we can have the software take the average time or the best time and tell us how long each step is taking. And that way we've got a really good idea on how long these machines are going to take to build. Of course, we have all the historical times and issues available in the SQL database, so you can mine them later. The automatic to-do list, again, I think is a really important feature because people are overloaded with information coming off of emails and such, and this stuff stays in the forefront. If you got somebody in manufacturing, their priority needs to be manufacturing, and we want to rise above all the different flood of emails that people get during the day. And of course, everything has to be stored in an SQL database, so you have access through Crystal reports. Get to it later. The ROI on this, it is intangible. A couple of key points to remember on the ROI is that we're trying to flex with the market conditions, and that works two ways. The first one is to be able to maximize our revenue by able to react quickly to the upswings, use low-cost labor resources on this upswing, and grab all the increased production we can while they're getting good. On the other hand, when we have a downturn, we need to be able to preserve the knowledge that previously was in people's heads, so if we do lose people, that we don't lose all that knowledge and we don't have to relearn it 6 months from now on the next upswing. When we're outsourcing or relocating a production, if we have this really strong process that we've gained our confidence in, then we can go ahead and outsource it and share that process with those new vendors. Also, it works two ways, is that if they're using ProWorks and they're running into problems, we can actually see the problems before they necessarily report them to us. Now, it's not really spying on them. I mean, they've agreed to use ProWorks, then we can see where their problems are, and hopefully we can start addressing that so that we'll all come out winners. And when we're outsourcing, it's really important that we're relocating the process, not the engineers. Personally, I've been on these things where we move a production line to China, and then we end up having engineers sitting in China for 6 months, and it gets very expensive because we're flying them back and forth to China. They're not happy campers because they're away from their families. So by investing a little bit upfront on the process and getting it well defined, it's just going to make it a lot easier to outsource. And then once we have pushed that outsource process, we need to be able to maintain the communications between the production people and the engineering people. And ProWorks has some neat tools to keep that going. And of course, there's going to be an increase of quality in the level of products because we're able to constantly refine the processes. It's just going to get better the more you use it. It almost becomes like a living thing, and so it improves with use. Talking about multiple locations, we're sharing these processes across with all the locations all the time, and it goes from both top down and bottom up from the production. So that's really kind of an important thing to remember. The tribal knowledge, again, we're sharing it between all locations, so there's no real ability to hide the secret sauce from each other, because we're really trying to make the company successful, not individuals successful. And our training is tracked, so we keep track of who needs to be trained. Are they, are we asking them to do processes that they're not qualified to do? I need to talk just a little bit about how ProWorks functions. I have a different slideshow that I'll show you how actually ProWorks works at the detail level. But to categorize it, first we have two phases. We're building the instructions in the first phase. We use an SQL database. Again, it's hooked up to the ERP, CRM systems, and we create what we call templates by experienced users. It's just basic computer skills, no more difficult than using Word. The second phase is using the instructions, and this is what happens on the floor. The operators, they're basically going through what we call media-rich instructions for each step. It can include text in multiple languages, it can include pictures, it can include prints, it can include video clips. Anything that you can open on a computer we can show you. So they've got a variety of different ways to see the process at as much depth as they need. And then the operators, what's really important is that they have access to all the previous issues. So you're going to see all the different issues and resolutions that have come from all locations on that particular step. So we're sharing all this knowledge with each other. And then all the process information, including how much time did it take to do the steps, were there material issues, did it work right the first time, did they have a problem, did they have to fix it, how did they fix it, all that is stored for analysis later on. Now that I'm pretty much done showing you the management overview, and please feel free to contact me directly if you have any more questions, and I have a separate video clip that should give you a demonstration of ProWorks that you can also view. Thank you.